Welcome to a presentation on building community through the transformative power of art. I'll give you a bit of the history of Vancouver Native Housing Society. We were founded in 1984, and our mission was to provide safe, decent, affordable housing for members of the urban Aboriginal population. Currently we have we manage 17 buildings. And we house now families, seniors, singles, and women fleeing abuse and women at risk. So we pretty well run the gamut of housing in the urban setting. So we find ourselves in a housing crisis since actually 1993, when really the feds got out of the housing game. It's been a struggle to develop new housing. In British Columbia, as in Quebec, we're fortunate because they were the two provinces that created their own housing programs after the feds got out of the business. But still, they don't have the horsepower of the federal government. In the 70s and 80s, Canada was pretty well the envy of the Western world in terms of its housing programs, and I think Bill from CMHC probably remembers well those glory days, and that's also when the co-op housing movement began. So for us at Vancouver Native Housing Society, our operating agreements will start to expire in 2019. So essentially that means we have no more federal subsidy for 2 of our buildings. And as the years go on, they'll all fall out of the operating agreements, and we'll be left to our own devices to try and still provide affordable housing with no government subsidy. And some facts about urban Aboriginal housing population. I'm suspecting most folks here work on reserve, but where it's pretty bleak, but the situation in a lot of ways isn't that much better in the urban setting, and there's no federal funding in the urban setting. So in Vancouver, Aboriginals represent about 2% of the population and roughly 35% of the homeless. Many are talented artists, and often they find themselves selling their work for 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. So there was really a need for a fair trade model, and that's one of the things we created in this building at 31 West Pender. There's actually a bunch of things going on there, which hopefully I'll cover in this presentation. Here's a piece of art by Jerry Whitehead, and Jerry Whitehead standing there in front of it. Jerry's Plains Cree from Saskatchewan, I think maybe the Prince Albert area. And he actually lives in one of our buildings. He's a single dad with 3 boys and a grandson that he takes care of. He's a great guy, very family-oriented. All his work is reflecting on family life. This building is a 6-story hotel, an SRO hotel, single-room occupancy, that we manage and operate for BC Housing. It was renovated, so we had this massive blank wall as a canvas, and we decided to paint a mural on it. And you can see them up on the swing stage. We had 5 artists working on this. Jerry Whitehead was one of them. Richard Shorty, who's Northern Tachoni from Yukon. Sharifa Marsden is Anishinaabe from Mississauga. And Heisla Collins is Heisla, born in Vancouver. And one non-Aboriginal artist named Richard Tatro. So we say that this mural is the largest mural in Western Canada. Nobody's challenged us. Anybody here disagree? Probably not. It's pretty big. It's about 7,500 square feet, 6 stories high, 120 feet deep. That wasn't our introduction into the arts, but it really motivated us to go further. It was done in 33 days. The artists worked 6 days a week from 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And we get a huge reception from the community about this mural, and it's a source of pride for Aboriginal people in what's known as Canada's poorest postal code. So it was really a motivating thing, and that's where we really knew that there was something through community building, through the transformative power of art. It seems like Native people had a lot of things taken away from them, but their creativity couldn't be taken away, and we think that's the path back to prosperity, that creativity, that innate creativity, and that connection to culture, which enforces that pride, and which, again, we think will be a great sort of guiding way on the journey to prosperity and self-empowerment. We developed the fair trade model, and that means a number of things. It means we give the artists fair value for their work. It also means that often when we buy the rights from artists, when we get royalties on those rights for art cards, for example, we split those royalties with the artists, even though we now own the rights. So there's a number of ways where we give back to the artist. And we sell things from $5 to $25,000. And jewelry, masks. Some folks here have been to the gallery. And it's really a pretty spectacular place. So these figures are, well, that $30,000 figure is 6 months outdated. It's about, I think we've sold about 70,000 in the last 8 months. We're doing about, on average, of $8,000 to $9,000 a month, which is pretty good. And we only see it getting better as we develop new ways to market product and to get our name out there. And it does take a while to establish yourself. We're in a pretty good location, even though we're in the downtown east side. We're right at the Chinatown gate, so a lot of tourists pass through there in the summertime. So in Australia and New Zealand 20 years ago, 90% of the art market was owned by the non-Indigenous community. Today they've reversed that situation. We're still in a situation where 85% of Aboriginal art is owned by non-Aboriginals. We hope to motivate folks to turn this around. Here's the artists who were on the mural. There's Jerry and Nicola on Jerry's right. Nicola wrote a poem that was on the wall. Sharifa, Anishinaabe. Richard Tatro is the non-native guy. Heisla Collins to his right is Heisla, and Richard Shorty to her right is Northern Tachoni from Whitehorse. So the mural is called The Eye of the Raven, and it's really a raven dancer in a mask with a shaft of light coming down from his eye and looking at the downtown east side and looking at some familiar buildings which are really run down and really poorly managed, and a lot of them are SRO hotels, and looking beyond that to a better time. You see a Coast Salish canoe and a time pre-contact when the area was very prosperous for Native people. Lots of fish, lots of berries, lots of time to develop the art. Here's the 40-foot pole that Francis Horn, Kut Wemaluk is his native name, has carved. We're just rolling it out to put it on the truck to take it to the building. We carved it, we actually went to our friends CMHC. They have a carving shed on Granville Island, and often poles are carved there, and we asked them, but they wanted $1,700 a month rent. So we actually went to Britannia Senior Secondary, the high school in Vancouver, the largest Aboriginal population, and asked if we could bring the pole there and carve it there, and they jumped on that and said, yeah, absolutely. So we got the students involved, and it was really a great process. And we bought two 24-foot long Canadian Tire carports. We joined them together right over the pole as it was lying on the ground. We brought in generator and lights, and the carver worked there. We now are in the process of trying to establish a permanent carving site at that spot, and we just got $20,000 seed funding to do some preliminary work on that, so that's very promising too. We created an environment for artists to succeed. Also in our building, the other two entities are, besides the art gallery, are 24 units of residential housing, studio units, 320 square feet each, and of those 24 units, 18 are occupied by artists. We have workshop and production space in the basement for the artists to create their work. Currently, one of the residents is carving an 8-foot pole in there. We have 6 or 7 residents who have work in the gallery that's sold through the gallery, and we help them develop their personal and professional skills so that in time they would be able to move into market housing and create spaces for other artists to come in. So part of our philosophy in our housing is that we want to create a dynamic process. We want to take advantage of the housing continuum, and we want to move people through. We don't want folks to think they've won the lottery and they're going to be there for life. We want to get them to help themselves to move ahead. Open people's minds, and people is the general public. A lot of people really don't understand what happened to Native people and what all the fuss is about, because they don't understand the residential school system, they don't understand the reserve system, they don't understand the Indian Act. So they need to be educated. And this is one way of doing it. Lots of mainstream folks come into our building, take the tour, and they walk away with a completely different attitude. So the impact on our society, we've moved beyond being simple landlords. We think we're proactive agents of change. We want to promote self-reliance in our residents. We want to promote community development. And we use an enterprise model. So we're not saying that government shouldn't provide funding for housing. We think government should, but we need a backup plan. And so we're moving ahead in an entrepreneurial manner. And we want Aboriginal-owned assets in the community, and we want to be regarded as one of the best housing societies in Vancouver, because we also manage non-Aboriginal housing stock, and we are considered a go-to organization, especially in the downtown east side, by the provincial government's housing agency, which is BC Housing. So we had an opportunity. We had the building. We've always had artists living in our housing, and artists are drawn to our buildings, and we get to know more and more, and there's tons of terrific work that is out there, world-class art that we can promote and sell and make artists prosperous. We want to be known as the place to go for authentic Aboriginal art, because that's what we sell. We want to share the Aboriginal experience so that folks in the mainstream get a better idea of what's happened, of the chief was talking this morning about the federal government not being engaged and not wanting to share the wealth, and a lot of folks probably buy into that. The media doesn't tell the full story. They only tell what sells at the time. So, in our small way, we're trying to get the message out. We also have a sweat lodge and a smudge room on top of the building. The sweat lodge isn't operational yet, but we hope in the next couple of months it will be. So, and we have artistic enhancements throughout the building. The third piece is the healing lodge, which is 18 units on the top 3 floors of the building. That is a facility for Aboriginal people who have to come to Vancouver for medical purposes. And we want to make that place as Aboriginal friendly as possible, and so we have a lot of cultural enhancements throughout. And it seems to be working. So anyway, I'll close with that, and thanks very much for listening.